Welcome back. Week 5. We're here for your waiver wire pickup show. We're giving you these last minute advice to put in. So when you go to bed tonight and you wake up in the morning, your roster is going to look much better than it did this morning. Coming to you, Luke Reimer, Ashton Rich. We're back again. Kind of an odd week in fantasy football this week. We had some big performances, but again, like some of these superstar guys, we're not seeing much out of. It's probably again some injuries, which we'll talk about, but like the Jamar Chase of the world are not really living up to it. The Derrick Henrys of the world, the Saquon Barkleys of the world, and then obviously we have the Malik Neighbors and the Tyreek Hills of the world. Who, if you have them, I mean, you are watching this show to figure out who you need to pick up. Ashton, this week, any big wins for you? Any big takeaways? Is there anything you love seeing? Is there anything you hated seeing? Anything you learned this week?
I tilt bet some parlays on Sunday Night Football and cashed, I think, 2 out of 2. If Tucker Kraft gets in the end zone on either of his chances to get in the end zone, I cashed 3 out of 4. But just how the cookie crumbles sometimes. Still good trucking strong in the guillotine league that I'm doing for the first time this year. Not feeling great, but we played tight end premium, and the guy that just got chopped had McBride, Ferguson, and someone else. I think it was Kyle Pitts. So I'm about to go hard on the waivers, and we're going to roll 4 tight ends out there because why not?
Yeah, I mean, at that point you kind of have to, right? It's like in a tight end premium, if a guy like Trey McBride's on the waiver wire, that's almost like in any kind of league if like Saquon's on the waiver wire.
Yeah, it's a pretty big deal. We had Jamar Chase get chopped first week, and we did $1,000 fab budget, and a guy spent his entire grand on Jamar.
Oh yeah. So that's kind of interesting. I'm in a couple of guillotine leagues. One of them I'm in. I think through 4 weeks, 3 of the teams that got chopped had Jamar Chase.
We had a similar thing, but it was Jalen Hurts. We had the curse of Jalen Hurts. If you had Jalen Hurts, you got chopped 3 weeks in a row.
It's interesting. So we're in I do a 32-man guillotine league where obviously 32 people, but we don't do a fantasy draft to start out. We do you draft a team. So I drafted the Rams, and then I get like Stafford, Kyren Williams.
Oh, so you're chilling.
Devontae Adams, Puka, right? So the first week it was the Dolphins and the Bengals, which is very funny because the Bengals were the first overall pick. They got chopped. So again, and that's been a league too, where I think Josh Jacobs went on and so like based off of like if you have the number 1 pick, you get less fab than the 32 pick. So it goes like I don't know, like 950 to like 1500. It kind of scales all the way up or whatever it is. So Josh Jacobs was on last week, and a guy spent 1,300 out of his 1,350 budget on Josh Jacobs, which is interesting to see, and I guess it paid off for him, but. It's kind of crazy how fab works, and how you kind of have to manage it. So with that being said, in our waiver wire pickup show here, let's give the people some advice on how to use their fab, right? And I think let's start off with it we talked about him last week. We're gonna bring him up again this week because I think in ESPN leagues he's still owning about like 30-something%, which I imagine that number is probably going to skyrocket up to maybe 70% this week. Is Woody Marks with the Houston Texans. I don't know. It doesn't feel like, Joe Mixon is like anywhere close to returning. I don't know that he comes back this year at all. Nick Chubb is obviously looks like a former shell of himself, which kind of makes sense after like 6 trillion knee injuries that he's had in his career. But it's very obvious that Woody Marks seems to be RB1 in Houston. He's involved in the run game. He's involved in the pass game. I think he scored a touchdown through the air and through or on the ground last week. So to me, Ashton, I don't know your thoughts, but this kind of feels like, it kind of feels like the early front runner for the Bucky Irving pickup of the week, Bucky Irving Award for, a running back coming out of nowhere to, fill in and maybe be that guy to kind of get you to the playoffs. Am I false on that? Am I overstating that? I feel like this is something that you spend a lot of your fab on this week, if he's available in your league.
Yeah, I think that, if you want to be conservative, maybe you drop like 55, 56% of your fab, but wouldn't shame anybody for going 70% in if you've got it. I mean, he out-carried everything Nick Chubb last week. I think that it's kind of a true changing of the guard for Woody. If you didn't pick him up 2 weeks ago when we said it's probably a good idea to stash him, you're probably facing an uphill battle now to get him if you've been active on waivers and don't have good priority in addition to your fab. But still put that bid in, be aggressive because, it's running back's one of the hardest positions to get figured out in fantasy football. You can kind of figure out receiver as you go, but it's hard to figure out running back. So I think calling him this year's Bucky Irving. It's hard to say this guy's Bucky Irving, but in the sense that he's kind of coming out of nowhere, you're going to spend fab on him. He could win you your league. I don't see that's pretty good comparison.
Yeah, and he seems like right. This Houston offense has kind of been stagnant since Stroud's rookie year. He kind of feels like the guy who's given them an adrenaline shot in the arm here to really get this offense moving. And I think at this point, if you're Houston, you're looking for anything to help out. So if Woody Marks is a guy that's getting you to the red zone and scoring touchdowns, like why wouldn't you run him as much as possible and just continue to give him the ball? Because this is a team that has a lot of expectations that are not living up to it. And I know that's probably coming from CJ Stroud having like one of the best rookie years from a quarterback ever. But I mean, if you're going to do that, I mean, at some point you have to live up to that in a very winnable division, right? I think the Jacksonville Jaguars are leading the division at 3-1, and they look like maybe the worst team in the NFL this year.
Yeah, the Jags are probably, it's just them and the Colts, and the Texans are kind of somewhere. The Titans they're god awful. When your quarterback is going on national TV after the game and saying, "I'm gonna keep it a buck, we're ass," that's just not a good place to be.
No,
but yeah, I think the Texans. Really, you could extend that. Let's just get some young guys on the field out to Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel too, because at some point, Xavier Hutchinson's out there, but is he really helping your offense? You might as well see what the young guys got. I want to say, didn't Jaden Higgins get in the end zone last week?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So he kind of got going a little bit last week. We'll see where that goes. But part of its offensive line struggles. Their offensive line is atrocious.
It's not great.
I'm sure everyone saw that clip of Jeff Simmons literally sacking CJ Stroud basically as soon as the play started. So offensive line plays part of it, but I think Woody Marks, he's going to catch enough passes out of the backfield, kind of in a way that Bucky was, that he's going to be fantasy relevant for you, even if he has a week where he doesn't. He might go 10 for 34 on the ground, but if he still catches you 5 or 6 passes, you're not mad.
I mean, yeah, right. Full PPR leagues, 6 passes is the same as scoring a touchdown. So, yeah, I agree with you, especially that offensive line. It feels like, in order to get something going, you might need to hit short passes, hit screens, just throw it out to the flat and let your guy work. So, yeah, I'm with you on that. I think at the running back position, there's not really much else out there that, you're really rushing to put some fab on. I mean, there's the Xavier Scotts in the world who saw a little bit of time with Minnesota last week. I'm not sold on Minnesota's offense, outside of Justin Jefferson. That was kind of a weird game in London or in Dublin, and they're staying overseas. So it kind of feels like Minnesota's a stay away from this week just because things are too weird. But one that came to my mind that we kind of saw him, see a lot of run this week. I think he led the Chiefs in targets is Brashard Smith. We're really not getting anything out of Isaiah Pacheco or Kareem Hunt. I know we're Xavier Worthy comes back and he looked awesome. We're a couple of weeks yet removed from Rashee Rice, but is Brashard Smith the guy that's kind of being that Woody Marks and injecting some life into the offense? I don't hate this is one to me where I think he's worth a pickup, but I don't necessarily know you're ever going to start him with confidence. But is he a guy that maybe you're looking to go out and get if you're in desperate need of running back help?
In general theory, I like to try and stash guys that have a path if X happens, right? So, what's going to help me more, Brashard Smith, if either Kareem Hunt or Pacheco goes down, or a 6th wide receiver on the bench or a 3rd tight end on the bench? You're ideally, you're never in a situation where you're going to start that Aronde Gadsden or that, that 3rd guy on the bench. But someone like Brashard Smith, who might be one injury away, or Sean Tucker or Kenneth Gainwell, like we just saw on Sunday, Jalen Warren's inactive. If you were able to wake up and throw Kenneth Gainwell in your lineup, you're happy he dropped 30 points for you. So I think there's a lot of stash opportunity at running back this week. You've got your Blake Corums, your Kendre Millers, your Gainwells, if he's not already rostered, your Smiths, like you brought up. Isaiah Davis, even, I mean, who knows? He quietly only ran just a few less routes than Breece Hall on a night where Braylon Allen goes down in the first half. I mean, Hall out-touched him, but he was still out there on passing downs. So just a lot of opportunity to kind of stash a guy and wait and see what happens. Somebody gets hurt, boom, you've already got him on your roster. You don't have to worry about fighting everybody else for 60% fab because you picked him up for $1.
Right. Yeah, it's an interesting way to look at it because I totally agree, right? When there's injury in fantasy football, there's always opportunity for something else to come up, right? And not necessarily injury, but I guess kind of not great play, right? Like Isaiah Pacheco, he's droppable in leagues. Kareem Hunt, you're never starting him. So, I mean, once this Kansas City offense gets rolling, we see what running backs can do, and maybe Brashard Smith is the guy. So yeah, I don't hate picking up for a stash.
And someone else I'll bring up, but Tajay Spears, just check out if he's on your waiver wire. You got a roster spot, stash him. The Titans need somebody anybody to do anything. I mean, Alec Iomanner is running as their wide receiver one for God's sakes, and he was like a mid-round rookie pick this year. He's coming back off IR eventually. I think he's eligible this week. Throw him on your bench if he gets a good usage. Hang on, see what you got. If not, you can just cut bait.
Yeah, I agree. And just talk about the injury. Let's talk about everyone's favorite team. Let's talk about the New York Giants for a little bit here. Obviously, we have Malik Neighbors go down. We'll get into receivers for a second. In a second, I just want to get your thoughts on Jackson Dart because I love Jackson Dart. Like, he looks awesome. I think with his ability to run the ball, right, that brings a lot of opportunity in fantasy football. I love young quarterbacks who run because they will run. Right? They're not going to sit there and read four different reads. As soon as the first read's not there, they're going to run the ball. I think he had 10 rushes for like 70-ish yards and a touchdown last week. And he's got a great matchup this week with the New Orleans Saints. We saw Josh Allen score a rushing touchdown last week against the Saints. Now, obviously, right, Josh Allen and Jackson Dart are two very different players. But, I mean, if the rushing opportunities are there, Jackson Dart's going to take him. On top of that, Cam Scadaboo is just a bowling ball who's going to continue to open rushing lanes for Jackson Dart, right? So while, not having Malik Neighbors is not great, maybe that means that Jackson Dart, becomes a little less confident in the pocket, which means maybe he runs a little bit more. I think Jackson Dart is definitely a guy that you drop some money on this week. And if you're a Joe Burrow or even a Lamar Jackson owner, I think Jackson Dart is very startable this week as well.
For sure. Yeah, I think if you need quarterback help, 2 quarterback leagues for sure, but even single QB leagues, just because he does have that rushing floor like we talked about, right? Like Justin Fields wasn't really doing much until the fourth quarter came around, but he scored a long rushing touchdown to kind of get going and ended up having a nice fantasy day, even though he didn't look great for the majority of it. But I probably wouldn't go in too crazy on Dart, like 15%, maybe up to 20% if I just really needed quarterback help, because there are some other options here, that might be available in your league. If like Sam Darnold's out there, he's been playing pretty well. I probably wouldn't rush to grab anybody else because the other names I'm seeing are just not very exciting. But, Bryce Young, not terrible either. They're going to – Panthers' defense was surprisingly good against the Falcons, which is just very odd. But they're playing the Dolphins. Dolphins are going to be on a rest disadvantage, playing on Monday night. Panthers played on Sunday, so that's one extra day of rest. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it is when you're talking about NFL football. I think you can't go wrong with Dart. Bryce Young, Sam Darnold might be a good consolation prizes if you need somebody.
Yeah, and just to speak for both of those real quick, Bryce Young, like Xavier Leggett, might be the worst starting receiver in the NFL this year.
I feel so good about my season-long under on his yards.
Yeah, great. But they have Jalen Coker's eligible to return this week, so does that inject some life into this passing game? Like everybody outside of Ted McMillan has kind of been disappointing, right, for Carolina, but there's not much to expect, but still kind of been disappointing. And then Sam Darnold, since he had that horrible start week 1, but since I think he's had 16 points each of the last 3 weeks. And that's exactly what you're looking for out of, someone you're picking up that you're just trying to spot start, that you're just trying to stream, is a guy who's not going to lose you the week. And, with the Ken Walkers and the Zach Charbonnets and the Cooper Kupps and Jack Smith and Jaguars and the Torrey Hortons of the world, he has the guys around him to just continue to have, 16 points every single week. So while Sam Darnold's not going to probably win you a week by himself, he's definitely not going to lose you a week.
For sure. Very safe floor. Ceiling outcome's not there. Seahawks defense is too good.
Right. Yep. I agree. And continuing with the Giants here, right? I mentioned it off the top, but I mean, Malik Neighbors, who I ranked as the number 3 receiver in the NFL coming into the year this year, goes down with an ACL injury, which is horrible to see because I think everybody and their mother was watching Malik Neighbors play football. But again, as we mentioned, when there's injury, there's opportunity. So what I ask you, Ashton, is it's an interesting thought that I had. The immediate thought is, right, Wan'Dale Robinson, Darius Slayton, guys like that are coming in and, probably taking those targets. But is this a situation where, we've seen Darius Slayton and Wan'Dale Robinson work as, wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, and there really hasn't been much to say about it, right? It's kind of been kind of stinky. Especially with Jackson Dart, a rookie quarterback starting. Is this someone that are either of these guys someone that you're going out and getting and starting right away? Or is their talent or maybe situation alone kind of scaring you off of this like they are to me?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we've kind of seen them in the roles before, and it's just not really worked out well. I do like Wan'Dale just because I think he's going to slide. He's just higher up on the depth chart. I think he slides more into some of that usage. Previously. Now, earlier in the year, he was getting some pretty good bump. Wan'Dale was the guy that was just used a lot around the line of scrimmage in his career. But, first couple weeks of the season, he had a 16.7 A dot, 21.3 A dot, which, pretty deep targets there. I don't think he's going to be running anything super deep with Malik out, but that's probably going to go. A lot of the deep stuff's probably going to go the way of Slayton and some combination of Slayton and Jalen Hyatt. But, if you want, I think Wandell's the one guy in the room that is, I think, kind of more talented than everybody else. Sans Neighbors, obviously. I think he's, he was pretty good at Kentucky. He could play. I thought he was good. I thought, him being used as like a kind of the same as JSN, him being used as a clear, just around the line of scrimmage guy was kind of criminal for his skill set. But I think if he's available, Wandell's the one I want to pick up. Other than that, I'm not really rushing to just like slam the table for Darius Slayton. I mean, now I will say the one caveat to that is that in the 2 weeks that Malik Neighbors missed last year, he did see an almost 30% target share, which is pretty ridiculous. But it didn't really translate to fantasy points. So and now obviously Dart should be an upgrade over whatever they were trotting out at quarterback last year, because God knows who it was. But pick either one of them up, take a pick. Which one do you think is better? If one succeeds, one fails, I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah, I definitely think while I kind of bashed them a little bit there, I definitely think that they should be owned, right? Because that opportunity is still there. Again, like I said off the top, playing the New Orleans Saints, like it is a good matchup this week. There are definitely some plays. I agree with you. I like Wan'Dale Robinson. I don't hate him for a DFS play this week. If you need a long shot too, I don't hate Darius Slayton. I can't imagine he's very expensive, and I don't hate Jalen Hyatt at all to look for a long one as probably a minimum price in DFS this week. One other injury that might have ramifications in next year. Tyreek Hill, I mean, his leg was sideways. That was
nasty injury.
It kind of feels blasphemous to say because he's not really that good of a guy, but Tyreek Hill has been like one of my favorite players to watch play football over his career. He's one of my favorite football players of all time, so that kind of sucked seeing him go down. But it kind of, again, an injury leads to opportunity. It feels like even with Tyreek Hill in, Malik Washington was getting opportunities. And given, of course, he's not as fast as Tyreek Hill and not as good of a route runner, but that speed, that idea of let's get the ball to this guy in space and let him run that Mike McDaniel uses in this Dolphins offense is still somewhat available with Malik Washington, right? We saw him hit a long one on that kind of sick play by Tua behind the back jet sweep kind of play. So I think Malik Washington's only owned in 2% of leagues. I imagine that probably jets up to probably 30 to 40 this week. But I think he's a guy, again, like the Giants, that there's opportunities available. So he probably should be owned in every one of his leagues.
For sure. I was trying to buy Malik Washington pretty much everywhere in Dynasty before the season began, just because I thought, there's a non-zero chance Tyreek gets moved mid-season into season, and Malik Washington's theoretically the next guy up. You hate to be right because of an injury, but it just kind of is what it is. I think Malik Washington's really talented with the ball in his hand. I don't think he's going to play the same role Tyreek was, because him and Waddle were kind of both playing the boundary receivers. Washington so far has been the primary slot for the Dolphins this year to 54% clip. If I had to guess, maybe they trot Nick Westbrook-Akine out there at X, just something gross like that. True. Maybe they play Waddle at X. I don't know, but I think it'll be some combination of Washington, Waddle. Maybe they rotate Nick Westbrook-Akine with whatever else they've got in the receiver room. I'm not very well versed on Dolphins receivers, but Nick Westbrook-Akine was that guy who scored like 12 touchdowns for like no reason last year. Just seemed like he made big plays for Will Levis all the time. But not talking about him. Malik Washington, I think he's really good with the ball in his hand. I don't think the drop off from him from Tyreek, the current version of Tyreek we were seeing this year, that was kind of like, you could kind of tell he was old and maybe not really getting the same kind of getting gone like he used to. It just kind of depends on if the usage is there. I think the talent is there. It just kind of depends on if the usage is or not.
Sure. And yeah, I think that's definitely an interesting. You would imagine that Devon Achane continues to see work in the receiving game. He's a guy like Woody Marks too, who catches 6-7 balls a game, which full point is as good as a touchdown. One other kind of interesting name there, and I would imagine like this is probably going to be a bigger overreaction for a lot of people. But I mean, Darren Waller scored twice last week. People, I would imagine the common people who maybe not paid it to as much attention to football are kind of like, oh, we have Darren Waller back from 5 years ago. We kind of saw with the Giants. I think if you're in desperate need of a tight end, I think Darren Waller's fine. I don't, like that's his ceiling is he probably reach his ceiling, right? Scoring 2 touchdowns this week. So I don't necessarily know that Darren Waller comes back with anything even remotely close to what we saw this week.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think this was a spike game for him for sure. He only ran a route on 36% of the dropbacks. Now, granted, it's been his first game action since January 2024, so he's been sitting for a while on the couch. But, breakout performance kind of in prime time, scored twice. People are going to splurge fab on him. I would probably, if it was me, I'd try and take advantage of that because if, a guy who's a little bit more rostered, maybe he's available in your league, Britton Strange, he quietly led the Jaguars last week in catches, I'm pretty sure, and maybe even yards. But he's getting 80% of the routes. His target share last week was over 23%, which we love to see for a tight end. He's just kind of being a very Mr. Consistent kind of security blanket for Trevor Lawrence underneath. But I mean, if he's catching like 6 balls for like 50 yards for you, that's 11 points. That's, you can throw him in your slot at tight end and be like, okay, I'm good at tight end. Let me go figure everything else out.
Yeah.
And if he scores a touchdown for you, even better.
Yeah, and we have some people watching. If anyone has any questions, please drop them. We'll answer your waiver wire questions. We'll answer your start sit questions. We'll answer your trade questions. We'll answer even questions not about fantasy football. How about that? So,
love it.
If you got
I'm
anything,
here for people.
Yeah, if you got anything, let us know. Talking about Brenton Strange, I think he's tight end 14 on the season. I think that's in half point PPR leagues. He's only owned in like 23% of leagues. Like tight end is always a position that, right, you either have a Brock Bowers or Trey McBride, or you're rolling with an Evan Ingram 6 points, or you're streaming everything, right? So Brenton Strange feels like the streamer to be tight end 14, and that's without scoring a touchdown yet this year. He at least needs to be owned. He's owned in less than 25% of leagues as a tight end 14 is kind of crazy to me. But I agree with you 100%. 6 catches a game, again, as good as a touchdown, plus all the yards. I mean, you're getting 7 to 10 points a week from a tight end. And again, if you don't have the Brock Bowers or the Trey McBrides of the world, that's all you really need, right?
For sure. If you don't have one of those elite guys at tight end, there's no sense in trying to chase touchdowns every week. You might as well just, you spent your draft capital somewhere else. You should theoretically be really solid at running back or wide receiver. At least if you're playing with good theory, you should. But, Strange, he's a comfortable kind of play at tight end. And to be honest, there's really not a lot out there on the waiver wire this week. Are people still playing Dalton Schultz in the year of our Lord 2025? That's abysmal. We can do better than Dalton Schultz, ladies and gentlemen. Like, we got to find something better than the doctor himself.
I agree. One other receiver I wanted to touch on, and hits a little close to home here to me being a Packer fan. By the way, I sat through that Sunday Night Football game, and I would imagine it was incredible for all 30 other fan bases. That was a waste of 4 hours of my life. The Packers wasted, the best game Jordan Love's ever come up with. But we did see a 3-touchdown game from Romeo Doubs, which, as a guy who told everyone to play Romeo Doubs last week, and as a guy who played him in like 3 or 4 leagues, that was great.
Feels good.
Yeah. I am here to say that we do this dance every year. Everyone who maybe is not in the Packers circle is saying, oh, Matthew Golden's wide receiver 1. Oh, Tucker Kraft wide receiver 1. Oh, Christian Watson, when he's back, he's wide receiver 1. Wide receiver 1 in Green Bay has always been Romeo Doubs. It's always going to be Romeo Doubs. He's the guy that they're going to throw to make the big play. I think he's definitely worth a pickup. I don't think he is right. Obviously, you're not starting him this week with Green Bay on bye, but I don't know that you're ever going to confidently start him as wide receiver 1 or 2. But if Green Bay gets into these situations where they can pass against teams like they did against Dallas, Romeo Doubs is going to be the guy that he's going to get goal line work, and he's going to get those third down work. So I think Romeo Doubs is definitely worth a pickup. I wouldn't spend a lot on him because I think you can get away with not spending a lot on him given that he's on a bye this week. But if you're looking for a Green Bay receiver, it's Romeo Doubs to me.
We want pieces of good offenses, right? The problem with the Packers is who's the wide receiver you want, because it's always like, do I want Jaden Reed? Do I want Romeo Doubs? Do I want Dontavian Wicks? I, for one, do not want Dontavian Wicks. But, so, I mean, you should be an easy pickup now to throw him by this week. Stash him, see what you got. If you saw me laughing, the reason is we had a guy in our eliminator pool pick the Packers, and because they tied, he lost on a tie because they did not win, which was hilarious to see that night. It made me laugh really hard. But, yeah, man, I think Dobbs is good. I've always kind of been a Dobbs guy. I've always kind of pined for more Jaden Reed touches, but I think Dobbs, as far as like a pure like traditional wide receiver, I think he's the best one you guys have.
Yeah, and what's kind of crazy in fantasy football, and I get with the hype surrounding Green Bay hadn't drafted a receiver in the first round until Matthew Golden this year. Matthew Golden's owned in 81% of leagues. Romeo Dobbs is owned in 36% of leagues.
Yeah, you're getting if this was a DFSU, that we would call that leverage against the field.
Yep. Yep. So Ashton, I think we hit on kind of the big points here. I think like Cleveland, there's some opportunity there. How much you trust the Cleveland Browns, I'm not sure. We kind of saw Isaiah Bond get his first real work this week. We saw a couple long shots. Browns ruled out Cedric Tillman this week, so there are some opportunities. Again, how much are you trusting Joe Flacco / is it Dylan Gabriel time to get Isaiah Bond? Yeah, to get Isaiah Bond the ball. And then on top of that, I'm a big Harold Fannin guy. I love players who can play receiver, tight end, and running back as the H-back position. I don't necessarily know that there's enough opportunity for him to really make a splash in fantasy football. But, in deeper leagues, I don't hate picking up either of these guys. But again, I don't think it's anything that you're spending, more than 1% to 2% of your fab on this week, right?
No, for sure not. I mean, I'm seeing that Isaiah Bond is rostered in like less than 1% of leagues. He's essentially free. Yeah, Cedric Tillman's ruled out, and that sucks, man. I'm a big Cedric Tillman guy. I thought the year that him and Jalen Hyatt both came out, as a Tennessee fan, I tried to tell everyone in my Dynasty League, I'm telling y'all, like, Jalen Hyatt's getting all the hype, but Cedric Tillman is by far the better player, and it's not close.
People were legitimately mad at me on the show for saying that Cedric Tillman is going to be a better football player than Jalen Hyatt. So
it was. If you watch the games, it was never even close. Cedric Tillman is, if he's just kind of a boring prototypical X. He's going to do prototypical X things. Browns, unfortunately, just can't get it together, and part of that's him and his health, but I had a big stance on him this year, and because when he was healthy last year for a couple games, he completely iced pretty much Jerry Jeudy for a little bit. And plus, I just don't think Jerry Judy's a very good player.
No, agreed. I don't think he's ever been a good player.
No, I think he got the Alabama bump for sure coming out of college. But I mean, hey, Isaiah Bond, he's going to have opportunity. His target share has gone up every week. It was up to 17.6% last week. I wouldn't be shocked to see it get above that 20%. The problem is it's the Browns. Dylan Gabriel's under center. How much better is he really going to be than Joe Flacco? Personally, I thought Dylan Gabriel could play as a prospect. I don't know if I saw him as an NFL starter, but maybe a capable backup. Yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. I think, there's a lot of guys this week where Woody Marks is kind of the prize of the waiver. Like we already talked about him and probably Jackson Dart. And then there's just a lot of guys that's like, maybe you stash him, see what you got, and go from there.
Yeah, it kind of feels like this is really the week where, right, it's kind of where shit's hitting the fan, where it really feels like, to your point about Woody Marks and Jackson Dart, that they're really the first guys that you have to go out and get. These last couple of weeks, there's been guys, that say you pick them up and stash them and see what happens. But I think we kind of know what's going to happen with Woody Marks and Jackson Dart. So I agree with you. I think those are kind of the two prizes here. Before the show, I mentioned too, Kendre Miller might be somewhat of an interest. He scored last week. Any strong thoughts on Kendre Miller? It kind of feels like, after an injury last year, people were kind of hyped up on him. It feels like he's starting to get integrated in this offense a little bit, for whatever that's worth.
For sure. And as someone who tried to get leverage on the field and DFS this week and play Alvin Kamara instead of Bills defense and some Bills players, I was very unhappy to see Kendre Miller touching the ball a lot on my Red Zone channel. But I think same song, stash him. I've heard buzz. There's some talk that, maybe Alvin Kamara gets moved, gets traded. There's no reason not to. The Saints are a dumpster fire. They need all the cap savings they can get. If the Chiefs come along and offer you a fifth for Alvin Kamara, why not say yes? I mean, you're going to lose him eventually. You might as well get something out of him, especially since you were in a true rebuild as the Saints. I thought Kendre Miller looked good on some of his touches. I was like, man, this guy, he kind of looks good. I don't know if he'll ever be actually good, but I thought he looked like he could make some noise. Bucky Irving also, by the way, is kind of in question for this week. So if you want to be safe on Bucky Irving stuff, go grab some Rachaad White, some Sean Tucker. Me personally, I don't think Rachaad White is a good football player. My money would be on Sean Tucker in that situation, but I'm also kind of a garbage man sometimes, as I've been coined by my league mates.
To add one more to that, we kind of saw Xavier Scott work as the passing down back in Minnesota's offense. I don't think he's owned in less than 1% of leagues. I don't see that jumping up much. but I think he saw 6 targets last week, or 6 catches, 8 targets last week, in Dublin with Carson Wentz at quarterback. How long is JJ McCarthy going to be out? How long is Carson Wentz going to be starting? I imagine we see a little bit more of Carson Wentz moving forward. But as always, I don't think Carson Wentz is ever going to be the guy who's going to, work the ball, throwing it up into triple coverage to Justin Jefferson. He's just going to take the easy, what's open to him. That's kind of how Kevin O'Connell kind of schemes his offenses a little bit. I think if you're in a really deep league and you need, desperate running back help, I think you can find you can find worse than Xavier Scott out there. At least the guy's seen the field. At least he's seen some targets in the passing game.
For sure. What it's worth on Vikings and Carson Wentz stuff, they've got the Browns and then the bye week. So I personally think it's going to be Carson Wentz for at least one more week. Give JJ 2 more weeks to get that ankle right.
Yep. Cool. Ashton, I don't know. Do you have anyone else? We can riff a little bit more, I guess. Before I ask you if you have anyone else, I'm happy to hear that you're a red zone guy. I love red zone. I think it's one of the greatest inventions in like human history. I've heard a lot of people talk smack about red zone because people want to sit down and watch a full game and see how their guys got there. While I get that, it's hard to really argue with nonstop action for 9 straight hours, right?
For sure. Yeah, big red zone guy. I like being able to sit down and watch a game, but I don't want to sit down and watch a game that I'm region locked for, right? And especially being in West Tennessee, that means I get the Titans a lot. That means I get just whoever, the America's Game of the Week in the afternoon a lot. So, yay, I get to watch the Titans lose again, or I could watch Red Zone. That's an easy choice for me.
Yeah. It's nice getting 2 TVs set up too. I know that people don't love doing it, but getting 2 TVs set up, and if you really want to watch a game, put a game on and put Red Zone on the other channel. That way, you're really getting everything that you want.
Absolutely.
Cool. Go ahead.
I will say just one other person I'll bring up. Let me go back here and find it in my notes. I think we've talked about him quite a bit, but if Troy Franklin's still available on your waiver wire, he's getting good usage. I haven't looked at exactly what he scored last night yet. I've had a pretty busy couple days around my ends, but I know Marvin Mims put up kind of a good game, which was surprising because I thought he was in the shadow realm. But let's see, what did Troy Franklin do? Okay, so he had 8 targets, 4 catches, 55, and no touchdowns. I mean, his usage has come down quite a bit since he kind of exploded against the Colts, but I think that he's still on the field enough. I mean, he only played 58% of the snaps this week after doing 83 and 79 the last 2 weeks. That's kind of weird. Might just be kind of a stash and see situation. Maybe Marvin Mims is working his way back into the rotation. Sean Payton's always been weird about that kind of stuff where he's got one guy that he just absolutely wants on the field 24/7 and then everybody else kind of just plays around him. But, if he's out there, if he has a chance at being the Broncos wide receiver too, he might be worth a roster spot.
Yeah, to add on to that too, would you say he had 4 catches for 55 yards or whatever? He also had a drop on like a 25-yard catch too, which would have would have been a great boost to it. So yeah, I agree. I'm a Troy Franklin guy. He got me to a championship in college football that I ended up losing. But at Oregon, he was very fun to watch with Bo Nix, and I'm a Troy Franklin guy. I don't love Denver because I'm not a Sean Payton guy. I actually hate Sean Payton. But it's hard to argue with kind of the right, like in an offense like his. I know Drew Brees is the quarterback, but we've had guys like Lance Moore and Robert Meacham become fantasy relevant. Yeah, so if we get any progression with Bo Nix, Marvin Mims and Troy Franklin will become names sooner than later in my mind.
Yeah, for sure. I think that for me, it's just those guys are both. Mims especially is really good with the ball in his hands. Franklin, I think he's kind of a speed guy, but both of them can kind of play in my mind. I don't mind stashing either one of them. How do you feel about someone like Ladd McConkey as a possible try and buy low target, just assuming that he snaps back at some point and kind of gets right? I'm just kind of going through names here who are underperforming, looking through some trade target stuff that I'm thinking of, and he's a name that just kind of stands out as someone that's probably been absolutely killing his owner and might be available on the cheap.
Right. So my whole thing with Ladd McConkey, and it was coming into this year, where I love Ladd McConkey. I think he's a great player. I'm a Justin Herbert guy. I think Justin Herbert's top 5 quarterback in the league. I don't know if everybody will agree with that. But
I do.
Yeah, but an issue with Ladd McConkey, right, is kind of Keenan Allen coming back and kind of reprising his role as, what we kind of saw with Lad McConkey last year. I think, if you're someone who spent a third round pick on Lad McConkey, or even like a late second round pick, I think I don't necessarily know that you're selling him for near close to that value. But are we trusting Keenan Allen to play a full season? I never have in his career. I love Keenan Allen. I definitely think that if you want to buy low on Lad McConkey, this is probably as low as you're going to buy in him. He's just too good of a player to not have in this offense. We saw the Chargers kind of not perform up to what we've seen the first 3 weeks against kind of middle of the road Giants passing defense. Not that their front seven might be the best in the league, but in terms of pass defense, it's not the greatest. Which it kind of felt like that should have been a great Lad McConkey game. Just get the ball into his hands on short routes and let him run a little bit. So I wonder if this is kind of let's slow down with this Chargers offense. Let's sit back and figure it out. So I don't hate buying low on Lad McConkey here. I'm not giving rid of too much because we have yet to see what's really happening. But again, I think there's a role for him in this offense. I think he's a guy that if you want to buy him, now is the time before he has that explosive game, because as soon as he has 100 yards on 8 catches and a touchdown, you are not going to be able to get him from his owner.
For sure. I think there's quite a big opportunity of some of these guys to go ahead and get them bought. I think prior to this week, you kind of had that window with Drake London. I don't think you've got it anymore. Yep. It's only week 5, but Rashee Rice is going to be coming off suspension soon. I might float out there and just kind of see, if you can get if you can buy him from the owner. Maybe the owner's worried about Xavier Worthy and how he's played when he came back this week. I personally think Rashee Rice is going to be a smash, easy top 12 wide receiver rest of the season when he comes back. The Worthy does a lot of great stuff downfield for the Chiefs, but they kind of need that guy underneath now that Kelsey's kind of not doing so hot anymore. I'm just looking through a quick top 150 ranking, and I'm just trying to see if any names jump out at me. But
one other guy that I had, if he's available to pick up, he's probably 2 3 weeks away yet. But if you're in desperate need of a tight end and you have an open IR spot, I don't hate if George Kittle's sitting out out there right now. I dropped him after week 1 in the league, and I'm going to have to work on going back and picking him up. Nino in the chat, what's going on, Nino? Good to have you back. Let us know if you have any questions. Let us know how you did last week. But if George Kittle's available, I think he's worth a pickup. I know, as always, we should preface all this with saying it depends on who you're dropping to pick up these guys. But if you can drop someone for George Kittle, I don't hate picking him up and throwing him in the IR and sitting on him for a week or two here.
Yeah, especially if you've got an open IR spot, there's no sense not to use it.
Yeah. On top of that, to add to the San Francisco receiving core, I think he's probably a week or two away yet, maybe even 3-4 weeks. But Brandon Ayuk's coming back at some point, which nobody's mentioned his name since he got hurt. He's a guy that you probably don't have to spend any fab on to get this week. And if you're looking down the road and you have a bye week where 2 guys are out, I don't hate a pickup for Brandon Ayuk sooner than later either.
Yeah, for sure. I think that what he does is a lot of what the 49ers are kind of missing. I mean, I like to think that Juwan Jennings plays the X spot really well, but I think that if you're asking me who's more talented, there's a reason Juwan Jennings was recruited as a quarterback and not a wide receiver, and that's just kind of how it goes sometimes. But I think that three-headed monster with Kittle in the passing attack is interesting because you could really interchange Ayuk or Jennings, either one to be flanker or X, to be honest, and then you can just kind of let Ricky go eat in the slot. Or they were playing a lot of Juwan Jennings as kind of a power slot. Teams have started kind of going to this big slot, power slot, kind of think Puka Nacua kind of guys. And, I think that Jennings would fit that really well. So I think you flip that. Maybe let Ayuk play X, Ricky play flanker, and then let Jennings just eat out of the slot. And you've got George Kittle. That's a tough duo over the middle between Jennings and Kittle.
Yeah. Yeah, Nino in the chat here. Appreciate you, Nino. I hope I'm not cutting out here. My Wi-Fi is not the greatest right now. I don't know if Nino,
for what it's worth.
Okay, Nino, we got him on the board here. Had a thin wide receiver room going into the week, but losing Neighbors absolutely destroyed all my hope. I would imagine that's the same for a lot of people. He was definitely end of the first round, beginning of the second round draft pick. Wide receivers left standing are Jacoby Myers, Alec Manar, and Stephon Diggs. It was nice to see Stephon Diggs get back into the 100-yard club this week. I don't necessarily know how much that's going to work, which is interesting. And before we get to your question, I'm happy because I wanted to talk to you about this. Now that we talk about New England, it was kind of the the start of these rookie running backs, right? Ashton Genty had a great game. Omarion Hampton had a great game. We saw R.J. Harvey get a bunch of run. We saw Travion Henderson get in the end zone. Do you have any sort of clue of what you would want to do with this New England running back room in fantasy football? We've seen Ramondre Stevenson kind of be that bell cow. We saw Antonio Gibson score last week. We saw Travion Henderson score last week. It kind of feels like Travion Henderson is the guy that if you had to pick one, you're going to start him. But I'm still a Ramondre Stevenson guy, but Antonio Gibson there kind of scares me off of the whole thing, to be honest.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I like Ramondre. I think he's a solid player. I just don't think he's got the kind of juice that Travion offers you, even in just the pass game. Patriots have a pretty late bye week 14 bye. I wouldn't be shocked to see Travion kind of as the season goes on. We've seen this movie before with rookie running backs and the incumbents, right? The incumbent's the guy for the first half of the season, and the rookie running back kind of gets more and more into it until he kind of takes the role over or at least splits carries with him by the end of the year. I just think Henderson's their most explosive weapon out of the backfield. Tony Gibson, miss me with Tony Gibson in 2025. There was a time and a place for Tony Gibson, and it's not the year of our Lord 2025, that's for sure.
I agree.
But yeah, I think Ramondre or Henderson, either one, are solid plays week to week.
Nino coming back. I wouldn't be crazy though to say my number one priority, passing up on Malik Washington, Jalen Tolbert, Darius Slayton, even with my wide receiver need. Right. I don't disagree with this. Like we talked about with Darius Slayton. I mentioned that we've seen Darius Slayton be, kind of the wide receiver one in a Giants offense before, and it really hasn't, shown out to what we hoped it to be. Jalen Tolbert, outside of kind of that broken play last week, he didn't put in, a great week. Malik Washington, it's hard to really pick him up and start him with saying that he's going to be Tyreek Hill and get 9 catches for 80 yards and a touchdown. So yeah, I don't disagree with this at all.
For sure, I think you just wait because God forbid, let's say that Kyron Williams gets hurt, it's going to be out for 5 or 6 weeks this week. Then Blake Corum all of a sudden is shoved into like a probably 85-90% touch role. He's the for sure number one waiver wire pickup. So I think holding on, and then your needs wide receiver, but you can always pick him up and flip him to somebody to get wide receiver help.
Right.
So I think you kind of stay, since there's no one at wide receiver that's just like a for sure, like this guy's a great pickup this week. I think stashing the one priority is not a bad idea.
Yep, I agree with you 100%. I think that's it for our show. We're going to get out here very shortly. If you have any other questions, if you're watching, drop them in the chat. If you have any questions after the fact, drop them in the comments. YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you find us, drop a question. We'll be sure to get back and respond. This is kind of an interesting week as a Packer fan. I'll say, like, we're on bye this week. We're coming off a 40-40 tie, which again is just a waste of 4 hours of my life. I'm ready to just sit back and kind of turn the Packers off from my brain for a little bit. And just take in all the football I want. Now, it kind of sucks that we're probably not going to get Lamar Jackson this week. We're going to get Cooper Rush again, which, I understand the frustration and the kind of panic meter on the Ravens. Don't panic. The Ravens have like a cakewalk of a schedule coming up like until December. They'll be fine. They'll still be in the playoff hunt. But Ashton, as a Falcons fan, are you? What's your overall thoughts? To me, as an outsider watching the Falcons, like I love watching Michael Penix. He just last game he just threw rockets the entire game, and that's so fun to watch. But do you feel like given Tampa Bay's injuries, is the NFC South attainable to win? Do you think a wild card spot is available? Give me your unadulterated, unfiltered thoughts for go 3 minutes on the Falcons here.
Yeah, I think that we're exactly kind of where I thought we were going to be right. We're not just this world beater kind of we're taking the league by storm team, but we're not exactly slouchy either unless we're playing the Panthers. I can't get over that game, man. It's just
crazy.
It's at this point I don't even get surprised by it anymore. It just kind of sad. It's just not a great feeling. Yep. We are also on bye this week as it looks.
I guess I should have known that.
No, you're good. I was literally pulling up DraftKings to pull up the lines for the game they're playing this week, but they are facing the bye week, so always good to have the bye week. I'll just say it. I think Bijan's probably the best running back in the NFL right now. That guy is nuts. He is just insane, and I have always been a very staunch you don't draft running backs high unless they are just the Saquon true difference makers at running back, because we saw it for the majority of the season until this week with Ashton Genty. You draft that running back at 6'8" overall, you don't have the team around him, and he just kind of flounders and doesn't really do much for you. Now, obviously, he got right in a big way this week, but Bijan's great, man. That guy, I love watching him play football, man. And Drake London, I was scared of Drake London as a dynasty prospect just because I'd seen this movie before, especially with, if you follow Pac-12 football, I'm going to throw a name out here, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, if you remember that guy. I was a big J-Jaw fan, and he burnt me pretty good. So I was a little scared of Drake London, but you were kind of getting a new breed of these kind of like so-called 50-50 jump ball receivers that can move. Tet's another one of those guys that if you just look at his size and his build, he probably, that's a 50-50 guy, but he can kind of move when he gets the ball in his hands. It's Cam Scatterbo. I love watching that guy play football. The Scat Pack, as I was seeing people call him on Twitter this week. That guy rules. And wearing 44 is even better.
I love it. I mean, that's 1960 football right there.
It's great. He's going to have CTE by the time he's 28. It's going to be so awesome. Don't wish that on anybody, obviously, but the way that guy plays football is just so cool, man.
Yeah.
And the majority of my buddies that I play Dynasty with are unfortunately big. They all either graduated from or have been lifelong fans of Mississippi State. So I get the Dak Prescott discourse pretty much every week. For what it's worth, I think Dak's a really good player. I think he's probably in that upper, like, pretty good, really good, but maybe not elite conversation.
Agreed.
He's a really good football player. I mean, I don't think you can take anything away from him. And obviously, he kind of lit it up this week, even without CD. George Pickens, that guy's nuts too.
Love George.
He's such a malcontent. Like, it's just so great. I think I don't remember where I heard this. I may have heard it on like an Establish the Run podcast or one podcast I was listening to. But it was like a former like Steelers staffer, and he was talking about when George is out there on the field, he just doesn't. He kind of forgets anything that's going on around him, and it's just him and
he's just playing ball.
He's going up against. It's just him and the DB he's up against because his splits, he's like not a good zone beater, but his man coverage success rate's like really good. So he literally just gets out there and is like, man, I don't want the zone, I want to run the ones.
Right,
it's just so fun. Yeah, just a dog in every sense of the word.
Great. Yeah, George. Like, yes, I've been on this show. I mean, I've been with Flurry Sports 4 or 5 years, and I think even when he was at Georgia, I brought like George Pickens is one of my favorite football players in the league. So I agree with you. The guy just goes out, plays balls, does not give a shit about anything going on. So yes, I agree. With that, I think we can end it here. We're nobody's talking about it. We're closely approaching basketball season, which means we're getting some college basketball in November. I know, Ashton, you're a mid-major guy. I'm a mid-major guy. There's nothing more than I love than sitting down like on a Tuesday night and watching like Robert Morris play. Like
just the most disgusting basketball you've ever seen in your life. Just
incredible.
Waking up at 10 a.m. on a Saturday to watch UT Arlington play like Marshall.
Right. Yeah, it's incredible. And then we get guys like we get guys who come in and are scoring 33 points a game, and all they do is dribble the ball on the court and shoot Steph Curry ranges every single time. Mid-major basketball is incredible. But this football show, we can talk about that in come November and December when we get Feast Week, which is another my favorite kind of weeks of the year. But with that being said, anyone else have any questions? Please drop them after the fact. We will get to them. We will be back tomorrow with our Lombardi Sweep Our Packers show. We'll be back on Thursday with answering all last-second questions before Thursday starts up. This running gag that we've had on the show the last couple of weeks is I've been wanting to turn into a black coffee guy. I hate coffee, but I love the idea of coffee. So I had one today, and I've been very sick after, so that'll be a funny talking point. But yeah, we're just hanging out. We hope to see everyone in the chat. As always, thank you, everyone, for being here, and we will be back 8 o'clock next Tuesday. With that being said, have a great night and good luck this week.